Everybody. This is Jim Saffron with Pure Vintage Media, and welcome to our podcast. Today, I spent some time with Tom Guerra, a friend, a great musician. He's played with just about everybody in music. I hope you enjoyed this podcast interview as much as I did. So now, Tom Guerra. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Pure Vintage Media, and this is our podcast interview, and thrilled to have with me one of my favorite artists, Tom Guerra. I've known Tom through Facebook interactions for probably almost a decade now, but I've come to really love his music, his style, and welcome, Tom. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much, Jim, for having me on. Looking forward to it.
I'm really digging that background, brother. You know, it's not filters.
It's not a filter.
Yeah. Just like you see the wrinkle above the Pure, I decided to get a real banner, and I can never get that wrinkle out. So
that's
for
all right.
the record,
I would rather have a real wrinkle than a fake background, you know?
Yeah. All right. First off, I think I know a lot of your influences. I got a little bit of this online, but the truth is we've talked about some of these artists, and I'm just going to run through them. I know one of your favorite all-time artists, as is mine, was Rory Gallagher.
Oh, yes. Loved him. Loved Rory. Loved everything he ever did.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough, I'm a little older than you. I got to see Rory at the Whiskey, half a dozen times through the years.
Wow.
And I very quickly, and it seems like I tell this story every interview, but I had the greatest job in high school. I worked for a record store in Van Nuys they were the first ones to import UK pressings.
Wow.
So we got these albums and nobody had heard of them. There wasn't a US release. The guy that owned it was a Brit. And we also used to get Melody Maker and New Music Express newspapers, albeit a month and a half old.
Right.
So super groups formed and broke up before they ever got to the shore. But that really exposed me to a lot of great artists like Rory. And I got to tell you, the interactions that we had, the Whiskey was a very intimate place to see groups like this. It seemed like every British group wanted to go. And talk about an every man's man, just wearing a flannel shirt, hanging out at the bar between sets. We even in high school, I don't know how we did this. We bought him beers, and just the nicest guy on the planet. So I'm glad we share that. Rory was there's nobody like him. And
yeah, I've done a couple pieces on Rory, and actually got to be friends with Ted McKenna, his drummer, and Jerry McAvoy. And they actually toured the U.S. with a group called Band of Friends. They asked me to play guitar. Unfortunately, our schedules couldn't sync up, but that was an honor for me. And Ted and I talked all the time, and he sadly passed away. I think it was in early 2020. Ted passed away, and Jerry's still out there kicking butt. Jerry's a great bass player too.
What a three-piece! You see some of the videos like Rory at the Montreux, and he just has the crowd ripping. They can't believe what they're seeing. Okay. These are other artists that I think you're influenced by or you really liked. Obviously Jimmy Page, Keith Richards, but the other one is Paul Kossoff.
Oh, love them. Still love them.
My first concert was Blind Faith at the Forum, and I'd already known about Free. I think I've told you this before, but they seemed to me to be a bunch of youngsters, like right out of a garage, kind of a little rough, but really, really soulful. And what can you say about Paul? Just a fabulous guitar player gone too soon.
And he spent his last night on Earth in LA too, and that was tragic. But the thing I loved about Koss, and I did a bio for him about 25 or 6 years ago for Vintage Guitar Magazine, and got to meet his love of his life, Sandy, and got to speak to a lot of his ex-bandmates, and they gave me some great input. And his music was just so pure. He had a great pure soul. He had a killer vibrato, as everybody knows, and
Right.
just a grasp of tone and a grasp of economy. And he played for the song, but he didn't overplay. And I, to this day, he's on heavy rotation wherever I go in my car. I'll listen to some Koss.
It's interesting that what you just said, economy and tone. And that's what I've come to like about your playing. The solo is nice and crisp and sweet. You never lose the melody, which I'm a big fan of. It just, instead of speed typing, you're playing along with it's just, it blends in beautifully
Well, thank you. I
with the
appreciate
track.
that.
Yeah.
That's
I think you focus on that quite a bit,
Oh,
probably.
that's great to hear that you picked up on that. And the guys I always have loved, whether it was Koss or Leslie West or any of the other guys, Rory, they always had those qualities that I liked as well.
Yeah, it's sometimes a little's enough, to put it bluntly.
Yeah,
Um, so tell me about now. You grew up in New England, in
yeah.
Boston, was it, or a suburb, or
I guess Hartford is a suburb of Boston if
okay?
you look far enough on the map. But I did grow up in Hartford, went to high school in Hartford. Still live in the area. Spent a lot of time in both Massachusetts and Connecticut, and played all around for the past years. And it's been a great place to do music and have a lot of friends here too. And I love the fact that I've made some of my great lifelong friends from music, and I'm still making music today. So that's cool.
You never seem to have lost that. Some people during the pandemic went back home, but it seems like, if I look at your history, you really have never lost touch with the Connecticut, it seems like, music scene.
Yeah, yeah, and I've kind of like a couple of the guys that I play on my recordings, from Boston and Philadelphia and Austin, Texas. Are my main drummer, Mike Kozak, is from Austin, Texas. So
Hmm.
the way we record now is a lot different than it was even 20 years ago, where we were still all in the same studio. And now I just collaborated with one guy from France. I appear on his new album. His name is Laurent Motro, or Moitro, I think is the way you pronounce it. And also just played on Luther Grosvenor, who's Ariel Bender from Mott the Hoople, new album that just came out last week. And I played on that. And he just got in touch today. He's recording another one, and he wants me to play on that early next year. So I'm really psyched to play on that too.
So we'll get to that, gentlemen,
Okay.
later in the
All
interview.
right.
Excellent. So, did you have in your family, and I always ask this, your family life, was your dad a musician, your mom a musician, or were they just supportive?
Um, my mom was a musician, is a musician, plays piano, great piano, has a great voice. My dad, really never played any musical instrument, was a huge music fan, is a huge music fan. And like my earliest memories in the 60s were kind of sitting on his lap and reading that Sergeant Pepper album cover. And he was really into the Beatles, kind of got into the Beatles post Sergeant Pepper and beyond. And to this day, they're his favorite group. He said they changed the world, and I don't disagree. So
Yeah, again, a little older, and I could still remember the Ed Sullivan Show and flashing up on the screen when they were showing all the members. They showed John and they said, "Sorry, guys," or "Sorry, gang, girls, he's married,"
yeah,
which
or guys too.
that's
Yeah.
always the proof of whether you actually saw that performance.
Yep. Yep.
So I asked you just a bit ago, you have a lot of guitars back there. You seem to like Strats quite a bit.
I
And maybe you
do.
can elaborate on I've done some interviews with people that love Telecasters as I do. Tell
Yep.
me about the Strat, what really sings to you.
I think it's the perfect guitar, personally. My first Fender was actually a Telecaster, and I love that guitar. And it just got to the point where I couldn't get anybody to refret it, so I sold it. It was mid '60s maple cap,
Mm,
real just beat to hell. When I bought it for $250, it had a little sticker that said Jose and a little naked woman sticker on there. Played that in the early '80s, and then when that thing kind of wore out, I traded for a '79 Strat that probably weighed twice what the Telecaster weighed. It had to be 11 and a half pounds, but it was cool. It was candy apple red.
mm.
Love that guitar. I just really learned how to play a Strat on that guitar and had that for many years. And the thing I love about a Strat is all Gibson Les Pauls pretty much sound great, but I found there's fewer sounds I can get out of a Les Paul than a Strat. A Strat, I can get like a real screaming sound. I can get a real nice clean sound and everything in between. I'm a big fan of the 5-position switch and kind of live in positions 2 and 4 to get that, what they call the quack. And I really love that. And even when I'm playing a more distorted or a more sustaining solo, I use that position because it really gets a great tone.
And what amp do you typically?
I've used every type of amp known to mankind. I mean, usually live, I was using a 50-watt Marshall quite a bit. That was a model 1986, which was from 1969. It was a bass head, which I learned much later, that was Dwayne Allman's favorite head. Also, for many years, used a Fender Vibrolux Reverb. Just did a show this summer, used that. Thing still sounds great. Used a lot of Ampegs throughout the years, both the Stones era Ampegs and the older ones, the blue check Reverberockets.
Nice.
Back in the early 90s, used Mesa Boogies quite a bit. Much to the chagrin of my bandmates because they were loud as hell. And I one of the newer amps that I've really fallen in love with is the Mitch Colby. It's called the DTB, or Dual Tone Boost 50-watt amp. I actually reviewed it for Vintage Guitar probably 15 years ago. And I called Mitch Colby. I said, Mitch, I want the next amp that you build because this thing is great. And I still have it. It's right across from me here. It's a great amp.
Or is that a production or small?
The DTB 50 was a production amp, and they're still out there. I don't know if he's still making that. Mitch then took over Park and started, reconstituting the Park, and then he started building Sun Dragon for Jimmy Page. I got to review both the small Sun Dragon and the Super Dragon, which was amazing. I actually reviewed the exact amp that Jimmy played at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a couple years ago when he inducted Link Wray. Same settings and everything. And you know what? It's based on his 100-watt Marshall bass head, and it's an unforgiving amp. It's not like a real sustainy type of overdriven amp. It's pretty clean. So you got to know what you're doing when you're playing that beast, and thing was unbelievable.
Wow. That's incredible. So it sounds like you played in a lot of local bands. Mambo Sons.
Yeah, Mambo Sons. That was kind of my big. We had a little record deal, and we did 4 albums. The last one was a double album, and that was a great experience because it was all original music that we got to write. Got to work with one of my favorite singers, Scott Lawson Pomeroy, and one of my favorite drummers, Joe Lemieux, and Mike Hayden before that. And it was great. It was a great experience. And we still, we played, we stopped recording in 2009, but we've played since then, a couple times a year since then.
And how were you discovered? Were you playing locally? And
I don't know if I ever was discovered.
So was it self-produced? And
yeah, we were self-produced. Well, the first album, Rick Derringer helped us out a lot on, and he plays on that. So that gave us a big boost. And then I produced the other records. Learned a lot from Rick. He was
Yeah.
great, very
Yeah.
generous with his time, and he didn't have to do what he did, and I always will admire him for that. He really helped us out a lot.
How'd you meet Rick? I only got to see him play. I think I saw a solo band that he was in back
Yeah.
years ago, but I saw him play a memorable concert with they were opening act with Edgar Winter was playing. He was playing with Edgar Winter. It was Humble Pie with Peter
Mm.
Frampton
Yep.
and ELP at the Hollywood Bowl. And
Wow.
yeah, and I went and saw the we back then you could kind of do these things, walk through the bushes and snuck into the sound check. And they had to do the sound check when the sun was already starting to come down. They couldn't do it too early because of Edgar. And I just remember Rick just, besides the performance, just really showing off and hitting all the licks. He
Yeah.
was quite a guy.
He really was. I was promoting a blues album, I think in 1998 on WCCC, local radio station here, and a guy called me in between songs. He said, "Hey, I really like the guitar playing on that. It sounds like you're playing a Strat through a Fender or something." I'm like, "Oh, thanks for the compliment. Do you play?" He said, "Yeah, this is Rick Derringer." So I said, "Let me get your
Wow.
number. We'll talk more." So I called him back and we talked some more. And I said, "I'm doing this record." Became the first Mambo Sons record, and would love to have you sit in on it. And so one thing led to another, and we stayed in touch right up until the end. And he was a great guitar player, way better of a guitar player than he got credit for. I mean,
Yes.
he could hang with Les Paul. He could hang with anybody. I mean, he was really super, super guitar player. He's a guitar player's guitar player.
Yeah, no doubt. I really have, based on what you did, I've gone back and discovered the anthology albums that Johnny Winter put out. Tell that story, because first I got to ask you your favorite Johnny Winter song, if you have one.
Well, I mean, to respect Johnny, it would have to be a blues song because Johnny's whole thing was to the day he died. He was most proud of his work as a blues guitar player. So I would probably say Mean Town Blues or something like that, some of the early live stuff. But I also loved his rock and roll stuff too. And as Rick used to always remind me, Johnny says he doesn't like rock and roll anymore, but I produced his only gold albums, and Still Alive and Well was my favorite rock and roll album that
Yeah.
he did. And I told him that I played Johnny a cover of that tune that I had done, which was a Rick Derringer tune, Still Alive and Well, and Johnny became a friend after a while. I did some work with him as well, and really loved that guy. And he was a pure soul.
Yeah.
No matter what anybody has read or written about him, he was a pure soul. He loved the blues, and his he played Woodstock. He blew Woodstock away with his guitar playing. But to the day he died, his most favorite and biggest accomplishment in his eyes was getting to play and produce Muddy Waters. So,
I've done a couple of interviews in the last couple of weeks, and it's amazing how many times, blues lovers and even, the guitar player from Gentle Giant who'd go, well, that was a kind of a prog band, but Gary Green was really a hell of a blues player.
sure.
And he said Muddy was the man. He just
Yeah.
kept saying that. And we were also talking about Rory. So
Oh, wow.
my favorite, believe it or not, was Highway 61.
Oh, love it. Love it.
I still, to this day, when I'm in the car and I need a boost, I turn that thing up. It's as fresh as can be. What a song!
It is.
That was one of my first albums, and I remember saying, "Did they forget to press the fourth side? What? There's nothing on it."
Yes, three-sided
So
out, right.
yeah,
Right.
that was kind
It's
of unique. But
flat.
I
It's
love
nice and smooth.
Yeah, yeah, I love that song. I love the album.
Yeah.
And then later, how you kind of drift in and out of artists. All those ones that were on, was it Alligator
It was on
Records, I think?
Alligator. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it kind of reintroduced me to him playing pure blues, and I loved
Yeah.
all those. Yeah, he
He
was
did
a
a great
killer.
version of Boot Hill on
Yeah,
Alligator and just
yeah,
smoked. Speaking about Highway 61, though, when, I don't know if you ever saw the Bob Dylan, it must have been the 30th tribute concert that they did in Madison Square. Johnny came out and did a version of Highway 61 that blew everybody's heads off.
Yeah.
And I asked him about that later on. He said, I got out there and the monitors weren't working. So he's like, here I am in front of Madison Square Garden. He's like, I just turned to the band and we went for it. And it's smoking. Probably on YouTube, I'd imagine.
Oh, it is. I've seen it. And I think this might be a false memory, but I think Bob Dylan said one of the best, tribute to any songs that I've written. He loved it. Um, wow. So tell me about that experience. You actually became good friends with him, and you produced some of his stuff towards the end.
I didn't produce anything for him, but he asked me to write the liner notes for a couple of his
Right.
albums. I interviewed him a bunch of times, got to play some of his guitars, and I wouldn't say good friends. I would say friends, just because he was a private guy, but he was a real great guy too. And
Yeah.
he was a like I said, a pure soul, a pure heart.
I go to a guitar. I've gotten sick of guitar shows, to be quite honest with you. It feels like Antique Roadshow. People dragging their gear from city to city. God love them. They're just trying to earn a living. But I always do Jimmy Wallace's show.
Yeah.
There is something about the entertainment there, and there's something about the Texas music scene. I
Oh,
mean, I've lived in a lot of places, but it's intoxicating. There's people mentor younger players. At that show, it's nonstop entertainment on three stages, and you never know who's going to be playing with a headliner. It's somebody that's just as worthy as a headliner, and they're in the backing band. But I love that, and I've fallen in love with the Texas music scene based on going to those shows the last few years. Just a great experience. You did something, and I think it was probably kind of a something that stopped, and I was interested in hearing your view of what happened. You were involved with the Yardbirds, and you were going to do write some songs from the Can you explain?
I
That
did write some
never happened,
songs.
did it? That got
Yeah.
shelved.
So what happened was the Yardbirds started really gaining some steam again with their reconstituted band. It was led by Jim McCarty, who was the original drummer. It
Yeah.
had Kenny Aronson on bass. It had
Ah,
Johnny A on guitar, John Iden on lead vocals and rhythm guitar, and Mikey Scavone on harmonica and percussion. And they started really getting some momentum again. And Kenny called me one night and he said, we're going to be doing an album. He said, and Kenny and I go back a long way, and he's played bass on like anything that I've ever done that's been any good, I think. And he's like, they asked me if I could write, and he said, I want to write with you. And I said, I'd love to write with you. So we wrote about 5 songs, and 3 of them we submitted to the Yardbirds, and their album was going to be produced by Jack Douglas. I mean, we were like right on the finish line, and I could taste it, And Kenny called me one day, and he was just distraught. And I said, "What happened?" He goes, "They pulled the plug on it." I said, "Why?" And there were various reasons, and it always comes down to business. So I had these 3 songs that were totally complete as demos, and I ended up putting them on my next album that I was releasing the next year, which is called American Garden. So that must have been 2016, 2017. We wrote together, and then American Garden came out in 2018, and that has the 3 songs on there that Kenny and I wrote for the Yardbirds. And you hear them, and they sound Yardbirdsy, 2 of them have harp in there. One of them is very much like something, Jeff Beck might play, and that one's called Family of One. The song that is called, what's it called? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on it. It's Say Goodbye to Yesterday. Real Yardbirdsy tune. So check those out. They're all on Apple Music and YouTube and all that good stuff. But yeah, that was a disappointment. But I got to be closer to Kenny, and Kenny and I also wrote some other songs that we that are on YouTube. One's called Kenny's Blues, that was just us jamming in the
Nice one. I've
studio.
heard that. Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it really came out nice. And I was doing like a lot of BB King type playing on that, but yeah.
And he's on that. One of my favorite songs of yours is Inspirational Memories.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Did I get,
yeah.
yeah. Kenny's on that, is he not?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's all over that song, in fact, because I wrote that for my dad because my dad is a visual artist, and that's about something. It's about the inspiration that artists get, and it's
Right.
it talks about the different mediums like watercolors and oils and turpentine and all that stuff. And Kenny was really great in contributing not only a great bass line, but we worked up some string parts on that as well.
Oh,
And
he did
and
those too. Oh,
he
nice.
did those too. So I mean, he in essence was really a big contributor. The other big song of mine that he contributed a lot beyond bass to was the song I did with John Butcher. It's a duet called California's Got to My Girl. And Kenny did strings and horns on that. And that's one of my best tunes. If somebody wants to check it out, check out my music, because John Butcher, who's a dear friend of mine, he's just released an album called Nothing But Funk. That's amazing. So check that out. But John sings half of it. I sing half of it. And it's about a guy who loses his girl to going out to California.
So I don't want to lose track here. I got to
Yeah.
go back just a second. Was Johnny A on those tracks that you released with
Johnny A was not on the tracks that I released because I played guitar on them, but
Yeah.
he had worked up his own guitar parts for them, and he played them for me. And as a matter of fact, he sent me one maybe a couple of months back. He's like, "You remember I did this?" I'm like, "Wow, that's sounded fantastic." So
Yeah, I saw him at it must have been 3 years ago at in Dallas, and and he did a total Beatles
yeah,
tribute, which was
yes.
just incredible. Really
Was it
nice
just
guy.
him doing the looping too? Was
Yeah,
it? Yeah, he's an amazing guitar player, and
he is.
he's a good guy too.
And now you bring up John Butcher. Can't tell you how many times I saw John Butcher access. I know he was an East Coast musician, but he played LA a lot.
He
It
moved
was
to
almost like
LA
he
in
had a
the
residency
I
there.
think in the late '90s, and then
Yeah.
he formed the band Barefoot Servants with Lee Sklar. That was a phenomenal band. Another band that was
Yeah.
great.
God, playing with Leland. Wow.
I know.
Yeah. Some great bass. That's the thing. You've played with a lot of my favorites. Just I don't know if you've just made a point of trying to meet them and then impressing them, or they just came into your life.
They kind of all just came into my life, and it was crazy how it happened. I mean, but I'm glad it did.
So the next one is Morgan Fisher.
Ah,
How the hell did you meet him? Mott was one of my all-time favorites.
really? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Oh my God. I saw that they were during the whole Bowie, era with them. Saw them forever, so many times in LA.
Wow.
They were they were always there.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. How did you meet him?
So in 2009, in early 2009, word came out that Mott the Hoople was reforming and doing a series of shows at Hammersmith Odeon, or Hammersmith Apollo, they call it now, in London. So I'm like, I'm friggin' there, you know?
Yeah.
So I bought a ticket, and my wife and son, my son was only like 7 at the time. We flew over there. The day I got there was the night of the show. So I was going on zero sleep. And a couple nights before we left the US, I'm like, yeah, I got like these crappy seats way in the back. I'm going on eBay, seeing what I could find. I found a second row ticket. It was only like $90. So I'm
Wow.
like, I bought it. So I bought that ticket, had it with me. Right before the Mott show started, I saw that Morgan Fisher was doing something called Meet the Keyboards at the Troubadour, also in London. So I met Morgan Fisher at the Troubadour. I started talking to him, and I'm really hit it off with him well. And I said, love to get together sometime in the future. And he wasn't playing the Mott the Hoople reunion at that point because it was just the original band, the original 5 of Mott the Hoople. So anyway, went to the show, was blown away, emotional experience. It was fantastic. And then a couple months later, he'd give me his contact information, and Morgan lives in Japan. And I said, "Hey, Morgan, it was really nice to meet you. Love your keyboard playing. Maybe we could work together in the future." He's like, "Yeah, I would love to collaborate." So I think it was about 5 years later when I was doing the first solo album I did, which was just called All of the Above. I reached out to him. I said, "Yeah, it's what I'm doing, the solo album." And he ended up playing on some songs on it. One of the songs is called Frankenstein Boots, and it was on the Dr. Demento show because it's sort of a Halloween type of song. In fact, I'll probably post it or play it, next week.
That's a memory, Dr. Demento. Jeez.
Yeah. So anyway, Morgan came to the US and I think it was 2015 after we recorded some stuff together and did a one-man show in New York. I went down to the city and hung out with him a bit, and he was just a wonderful guy. And then when Mott the Hoople 74 got together in 2019, we had played a lot together at this point. I went up to Boston and saw them. That was the version of Mott the Hoople with Ariel Bender and Morgan Fisher. So I got to hang a bit with them backstage, and that was cool too. So, and I just talked to him recently, and he's doing well.
So is that how you met Luther, through him? Or is that another person that just drifted into your life?
No, I met Luther because when they were getting ready to do the Mott in 2019, the Mott 74 shows, I reached out to him and I said, "I'd love to do an interview of you for Vintage Guitar." So that's how I met him. And then he said, "I'd love to hear some of your stuff." He said, Morgan, I think it was Morgan or somebody told him about me or whatever. So I sent him my stuff, 3 or 4 albums, I think. And he sent me this big long letter, and that was very nice. And I said, "Hey, I'd love to work together at some point. If you ever have a space on an album for me, or I'll blah, blah, blah." So he got in touch with me in late 2024, and he said, "I'm doing another album. Here's a song I'd like you to play on called Bottleneck Blues." And I did it, and it was pretty quick. I did it maybe 1 or 2 takes, and it's on his new album, and it came out really nice. He didn't use all of the guitar playing that I did, but he used enough of it where he's playing acoustic and some dobro stuff, and I'm playing electric. And he just, like I said, he just asked me to play on his upcoming one again, which is really cool.
It's a nice tribute. Yeah. To this day, just like Highway 61, when I need a lift, Spooky Tooth, I Am the Walrus.
Oh my God.
That solo never gets old.
That's great.
It's another one where John Lennon said, "My favorite version of that song."
Really?
Yes, he is. Wow. That's in print, and I can see why.
It's a sledgehammer version too. And I love, my favorite all-time playing by Luther is on Spooky 2, the Spooky 2 album, their second album, called Evil Woman is the name of the tune.
Oh yeah.
And he just goes nuts on it. I've heard it described as unhinged, and man, just wicked guitar play. And then also I love his playing on the Mott live album. That to me is one of the greatest live albums of all time.
I'm describing this not as a player, but as a fan. I've always loved guitar players that it feels like, and Brian May's like this, the guitar is running away and the notes that they hit are just kind of like trying to control it.
Yep.
And that's the type of guitar playing I love. One of my all-time favorites. Before we go on, how did you meet Kenny? Is Kenny from that area?
I was doing some recording, and I had a little studio, and I had a guy in to the studio by the name of Alan St. John, he played on the first Mambo Sons record, and he was Billy Squire's old keyboard player. He plays on all those Billy Squier tunes, and he was in the studio, and he's like, "Well, who's playing on the rest of this?" I said, "I'm still looking for a bass player," and he's like, "Well, Kenny Aronson's in New York City. He's not too far away. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to get Kenny. So I sent Kenny probably, I think the whole album's worth of demos on a cassette. I mailed it to him, and he called me and he said, "Yeah, these are good tunes." One tune in particular called Tomonga Street he said, "That's my favorite song. You should write a whole album like this song." I said, "Well, I can't write a whole album like this song because it'll be just like that song, you know." So, but anyway, he came up and tracked the album, and then we stayed in touch, and then he ended up playing on my solo stuff as well too. And he's a fantastic player. And a great human being too.
Three. I got to. I did an interview just recently with one of my favorites, Jimmy Haslip,
Hmm.
uh, Jocko, and Kenny. Those three, I could listen to them forever,
Yeah.
and very distinct styles, but
Yep.
fabulous musicians. You've got a whole career in writing, and I've enjoyed a lot of your articles. And I just reread the one you did with Elliot Easton. I guess after the book came out, the recent book came out, you went back and looked at that. Um, you got a nice style. Were you always a writer, or is that something that just kind of came to you later in life?
No, it just came to me. In fact, about Jesus in the I think in the late '90s, I was playing and doing a lot of gigs with my band at the time. We were playing a lot of blues stuff, and did some opening slots for Ronnie Earl, the great guitar player.
Yeah, sure.
And I was talking to a guy from Vintage Guitar Magazine, and he's like, "Well, what are you doing these days?" I said, "Oh, we got a show coming up, opening for Ronnie Earl." And he's like, "Wow, I'd love to interview him." I said, "Well, I could interview him." And he's like, "Do you write?" I said, "Sure." And I write checks out, but I mean, I knew the questions to ask because I'm a guitar player, and I know
Right.
I was a longtime fan of Vintage Guitar Magazine. So I started writing for Vintage. I think that was '98. Interviewed Ronnie a bunch of times. He's a friend, and he's a great guitar player, and just kind of took it from there.
So you write for, do you still write for Premiere Magazine?
I've written a couple things for them, but I haven't kept up on that. I still write for the Tone Quest Report and
Right.
Vintage
Do
Guitar
that one.
Magazine. And Tone Quest just recently ran an interview I did with Mike Campbell, the great Heartbreaker guitarist who's now with the Dirty Knobs. And Mike was really cool to me after that, and we got to hang out a bit. And just a real great guitar player, great guy too.
It's amazing. You're not supposed to meet your guitar heroes, but so many of them later in life, even if they were arrogant assholes, early on, we all mellow out and we realize we should be very grateful.
Yeah.
And especially when you're on Facebook, you see that a lot of these guys are just humbled by the fact that not only people still remember their music, but they still love it. And it's led to some interesting revivals. The next generation
Mm-hmm.
gets turned on to them the way your dad turned you on
Yeah.
to the Beatles. I love that. There aren't a lot of things to be proud of with Facebook or like about Facebook, but that's one of them.
That
And
that is one of the few positive aspects of social media.
yeah,
I'm feeling there's a lot of negative aspects of social media as well that
yeah,
are ugly. But yeah, the Elliot Easton thing was cool too, because after I read the book, I sent him a note and I said, "Man, I had all the respect in the world before I read this, but after reading this, you know, I have even more respect for you, because if you read the book, I don't want to give it away, but it's an incredible book. Bill Janovitz wrote it, and you'll see the way things got in that band by the end, and it wasn't pretty. So and Elliot was a prince of a guy, and
yeah, still is.
and
Yeah,
still is.
he he's another one that belongs in that club along with you that knows the perfect length of a solo and never loses the melody. Those are my two criterias right there. I don't want to be the guy that gets up and and gets a beer at a concert because the solo is going on for 20 minutes. And I almost hesitate to call them solos. They're just part of the song.
Right, right.
That's what, if you can kind of blend in with the rest of the song, those are my favorites. So yeah, great individual, great guitar player. Um, okay, I waited till the end. Let's talk about vintage guitars.
Yeah, yeah.
So first off, what's your feeling about the market lately? Because if for those that don't know, Tom is a fellow guitar nerd, and you know, and I laugh because I see you occasionally say selling for a friend, and I'm going, is it really a friend or is it him?
No, it
And he
really
doesn't
is a
want to like,
friend. I've helped
okay,
probably a dozen people get rid of their collections, and if I say selling for a friend, it is a friend, and
okay.
I usually vet the guitars to make sure I'm helping them sell something that is actually what they think it is too. So
Yeah, you would be somebody that if I bought it through you, I'd have no, I wouldn't want to like rip the neck off. I'd already feel pretty comfortable that it was a good piece.
yeah.
Do you sell any of your guitars, or are you a buy and hold?
No, believe it or not, despite what you're seeing in back of me, I've gotten rid of a huge amount of guitars over the past 5 years. Um, but in terms of where the market is, it's really interesting because if you look at what happened in 2008 and 2009 when the economy crapped out, the vintage guitar market took a big hit back then. Then, when COVID hit, I was thinking, this shows how much I know. I was thinking, wow, the vintage guitar market's going to take another big hit. The economy is going to be hurt with this COVID pandemic. And just the opposite happened. The market exploded. And I think it's come down since then. I do see it coming down. And what I've seen coming down, especially, are the bigger amps, too.
Yeah.
Up until the early days of COVID and even into COVID, guitars went up like this, amps went up like this, but now you're seeing a lot of the real big vintage amps, the Marshalls, the super reverbs, the black panel super reverbs, really going down in price, which is surprising. But I think it comes down to who likes those amps. Guys like us. Well, who wants to lift 100-pound amp at our age, And I think that is part of it, And the other thing, like the 100-watt Marshalls, I mean, probably one of the greatest sounding amps ever built. But where are you going to play the thing? Yeah,
You're rattling the windows at one, and your
your teeth.
neighbors.
You're rattling your
Yeah.
false teeth.
Right. Yeah, nobody, I saw that trend a number of years ago. Everybody wants to play low wattage tone amps,
Yep.
and mic them or do a direct. It's
Yeah.
just, and they sound great. And
Yeah.
yeah, everybody wants, I stood in front of Jeff Beck at a concert at the Hollywood Palladium with Beck Bogart and a piece,
Oh, jeez.
and I was right in front of his amp. I can't remember what he was playing, but literally in high school, and my ears rang. I'm not kidding you, for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I
I
thought
believe
it
it.
damaged them. Yeah. So
It's
no one
funny
wants to
that
go
you
through
mentioned
that
Jeff
anymore.
Beck because I think the one of the last tours I saw of his when he was playing with Jennifer Batten and his band,
Oh,
I was right in front of the PA system, right near him, and I think honestly I got serious hearing damage. It was excruciatingly loud,
yeah.
and I mean it wasn't even his amp; it was coming through the PA.
It
It
was a
was
bad
crazy.
mix, probably.
Yeah, it was killer. But so I do think the small amps are still really hot. I was talking to George Gruen, to drop a name,
Yeah.
probably about a year ago, and I said, "Where do you think it's all going to go?" And he said, "Well, I think the classic instruments, the classic era Tellys, classic era Strats, classic era Les Pauls, are going to hold their value, and I think that's probably what will happen because those guitars, they're not making any more of them, and those are the vintage guitars. I mean, I see somebody selling like an '85 Strat or something and saying, "Oh, this is a vintage Strat," and I'm like, well, there's a way you can determine the word vintage, and
Yeah.
some people think it's anything 25 years old or older, and other people like me think it's from the glory days of that instrument. So, but it's open to interpretation.
I've, just so you know, pure vintage. The only reason we chose the word vintage, in my mind, it was vintage today, vintage tomorrow, 50 years, maybe some of the stuff will be vintage, but my partner and I just like the name.
Yeah, it's a great name.
So I get a lot of grief when and to be honest, to make sure that we're not a behavioral sink and are constantly bringing younger people. Let's be honest, what's vintage to us is not vintage to a younger person. So
Right.
I didn't want to be exclusionary in
Yep.
that sense, but I still get the it's got to be a certain age. We just like the name; it rolled
I
off the
know,
tongue.
I know.
That's
And I
yeah,
mean there are snobs in all genres and all areas of life, and I don't want to
yeah,
be one of those vintage snobs.
yeah,
And I don't like the blues snobs either. Oh,
yeah,
Johnny Winter, he can't play blues because he played rock. He's one of the
yeah,
greatest blues players ever.
yeah. And he's from Texas.
And he's from Texas. Yeah.
Love it. Brother, you've been wonderful to interview. I hope I did my homework.
Oh, you did
And
a great job. Thanks so
uh,
much. It was
you,
really a pleasure, and good luck, continued good luck with the site. It's a great site, and I would
thank you.
encourage people to check out your site as well.
Thank you. You've been very generous with your time. Everybody, thanks. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and we'll see you soon.